intro. Let me turn off. Okay, so this is Seb. He's the co-founder of Noodle, which is an AI native whiteboard built to empower product teams to work faster and smarter. So he's also created a brainstorming game called Mutagen that's promised to help people think out of the box. And in his past work as an IBM consultant, he's observed how teams waste hours on alignment and busy work. So I'll hand it over to you.
Hey everyone, it's from my lightning talk. So I'm going to be talking about how whiteboards, how they're different interface for interacting with AI compared to the typical chat interface. And that's pretty much it. So I guess for the people who are here, thank you, my great audience. Have any of you guys used any whiteboard AI tools, like for example, Miro Sidekicks, FitJam? How did you find it? Okay. See, okay, it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's fine. I don't think they're necessarily super developed yet, but we'll go into a bit more detail on that. So I'll just talk a bit. I'll introduce myself for people who don't really know me. I'm Sebastian, and I'm a builder. One of the reasons why I really like building is that it helps you really deep dive into a topic, really stretch it out and see where does it not fit, like where does it kind of push back, and where does it feel comfortable. So one of the things that I built before was Mutagen, which is a game for brainstorming. And in the process of building that, I learned a lot about how creativity works. And now I'm building Noodle, which is an AI native whiteboard. And through building this, I'm learning a lot about how we interact with AI and how we can, in the future, interact with AI in different interfaces aside from just like typical chat interface. So let's chat about interfaces, shall we? Chat's the classic. It's the first thing that they ever came out with. OpenAI's ChatGPT, and it makes sense, right? It's classic. It's easy. It's like Coca-Cola or a Heinz. It's the first thing that you think of when you think of AI nowadays. It's the chat. And let's give an example, right? We're creating a new flow for elderly people who need to book airline tickets, right? It's great for focus work, right? You can deep dive into that specific person. Allows you to deep dive into the topic. You can talk to it very naturally. You just like ask it a question and then it'll give you something back. You don't need to learn like SQL. You don't need to learn all these different workflows. It's also very straightforward, and it doesn't bother you, right? When you ask it a question, you need the answer right there and then. It's very unobtrusive. However, sometimes not, like these aren't all good things, right? Because it's very, focused, it makes it hard to explore multiple topics at once. The chat interface makes it very hard to explore all of these different areas. It's difficult to branch out, or at least not in depth. You can ask it for 50 different questions, but the moment that you want to develop any of them, you're going to have to start focusing on each one by one. Conversations can also be messy, right? I mean, when you talk to people, when they talk back, there's a lot of miscommunication that can go on, and it's very easy to lose context. It's also really painful to backtrack and edit things. If, I made a mistake back in the chat, I can't just edit it, I can't move it around. I have to tell the chat, like, oh, hey, actually, can we ignore some of this stuff? Can we, go back a bit? And it's just impossible. It's one way only for chats. And chats are also reactive and not proactive. They only respond when you need something from it. Otherwise, it's dead silent. So what I'm introducing now is the whiteboard. I think for very clear reasons, the whiteboard does have advantages over chat, right? It's very easy to do teamwork, or like collaborate through whiteboards. It's the go-to tool. Whereas if you're trying to collaborate over chat, that might be a bit difficult. Have you ever tried to do something completely over Slack without any like in-person meetings, or talking to them in person, sketching things out? Pretty difficult. It's also a lot more flexible, as you can see. Even something as simple as laying out information, I'm able to lay it out in like a 2x3 as opposed to just having it in a list, chunk of text. You can kind of compare it in that way, similar to like Word versus PowerPoint. And I'm not gonna go through every single thing here, but what I do want to touch on here is proactivity, and it's where work happens, right? We're all talking about how data and context are super important for AI, but whiteboards are where the work happens. When you're on Miro, you're working with your team, everyone's contributing, everyone's putting down their thoughts. It's not always like that with chat, where you think outside of the chat, and then you put it in when you're ready to actually give it something. So the chat actually misses all of that messy thoughts, all of that messy discussion that you have before you go into it. And let me show you exactly what the whiteboard looks like. Let me just go to this. Let me use this. Yeah, so this is what our whiteboard looks like. Like I said, you can spread things out very easily. Sorry, this is actually the wrong page. Yes, okay, sorry, this is the right one. So yeah, I mean, same canvas, but we're just having that typical session where it's like, oh, we have a problem. In this case, it's a taxi elderly person who wants to book flights, but they're having trouble. The content itself doesn't really matter. But what I would like to highlight are these nudges. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with proactivity, where it notices that maybe I'm struggling to add a bit more information to flesh out my persona. And it asks me some questions to help me think about it more in depth. Whereas with the chat, I can show you exactly what happens when I give similar information. I tell it like, hey, I'm working on this problem. These are some of the pain points, and then it immediately jumps into solutioning. Not even solutioning, it jumps into the prototypes, it jumps into wireframes. And for some people, this is great, but when you're trying to do when you're trying to really work through a problem, this kind of stuff isn't helpful, and it's what results in slop that we care so much about. So with Noodle, what we're trying to do is introduce these nudges, which notice when you're struggling, notice when it can jump in and help, and provide that help. You can accept it if it's helpful. And this is for something like developing a persona. Let's say you're brainstorming ideas, right? Where we have like a little brainstorming section here. Let's say, your teammates are brainstorming. It's difficult for them to think of ideas. We've all been there. And when the AI notices, it should give you a nudge. So we'll probably have to wait a bit, but I can kind of talk through the nudge system here as well. So again, the nudge system is proactive. I don't need to necessarily prompt the AI like, hey, I'm having trouble. Can you just give me some help? Instead, it notices when you're struggling and is able to jump in proactively. I guess while we wait for this to work, let me go back and explain, what the nudge system is. So I have 3 areas over here: signals, visibility, and action. And these are kind of relevant for any AI product that you create. Signals So how do we actually know whether someone's struggling or not? It could be, are they staring at a blank post-it for 15 seconds because they don't know what to write? Is it they're writing and deleting stuff very quickly because they have an idea, but then they delete it because they're not sure about it, they're not confident about it? Is the whole group not writing anything? And maybe that indicates that the team is listening to something and aren't supposed to be working anyways. Or if there's 10 people in a group, 7 of them are working and 3 of them aren't, then that might indicate that, hey, this is an active working session, and these 3 people in particular, yeah, it's okay. These 3 people in particular are having issues. And then the second point, visibility, a bit ironic, but the second point, visibility, for Miro, for example, their AI, oh yes, visibility, and there it is. For something like Miro, one of the big pain points that people have with Miro's AI is that you have to select the post-its that you want it to see. It doesn't see the whole board at all times, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? If you want the AI to work with the whole whiteboard, it needs to be able to see the whole whiteboard at all times and have that context. And then once it has those signals and the context of the whole whiteboard, then it can finally act. So that's Noodle, that's the nudge system, and I hope that you guys get to try it out soon. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Seb. That was really interesting. I'm very excited to try out Noodle. When can we try it out?
Hopefully end of this week. Yeah, we'll announce like a soft launch and send out preview links to anyone who's interested.
That's awesome. You'll send it out in the WhatsApp, friendsofbigmom.com WhatsApp?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sure.
Okay, great. Another round of applause for